started. So I'm gonna, let's just go to the next page. I wanted to, for those who may not be familiar about the Exit Planning Institute's West Michigan chapter, I started this last year, May 2019. Randy Rua, our speaker, is also on the leadership team. And we have Paul Zielinski, and then we have Tammy Sisma. I'm having a senior moment here. And a few other people you'll see in just a second. So the purpose of the chapter is really to talk about issues that face business owners every single day. We certainly understand that the business owner market in the privately held sector is primarily owned now by baby boomers. And being able to educate them and help them make better decisions to not only prepare for an inevitable transition, but to be able to capture and harvest and manage a more creative value for them to move on to the next phase of their life is really what this is all about. So we're trying to bring in a number of speakers with content that we feel is relevant not only to you as advisors, but to business owners. And just about an hour ago, the majority of our leadership team had met, and we are putting together our 2021 curriculum and coming up with all of the topics, and then we'll be putting together our speakers for the 21 curriculum. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide there, Lisa. So if you're not familiar with this, kind of who we are, and then this is the leadership team that I was kind of drawing a blank on for some apparent reason. We have Randy Rua and Tamara Sisma. We have Mark Davis from First Business Bank, Paul Zielinski, Expense Reduction, and then Chip Talon from Best Poor Walks PC at Grand Rapids. So certainly, and we try to expand the leadership team. So if you are not in any of these particular fields and are interested in serving on the leadership team, certainly reach out and connect with any of the leadership team people and be happy to chat with you about becoming part of it. Our goal is certainly to continue on with our mission. So our chapter spotlight this month, is Rob Sly from the Family Business Group, FBCG, and he is here in Grand Rapids. The FBCG group is, I believe, an international group. I believe so, isn't it, Rob?
Yes. Serves clients around the world, right?
Yes. And so Rob has been, Rob has been doing this for a number of years, about B3, as you can see from his bio and resume that we have here. And he is a regular participant inside of the EPI West Michigan chapter. And what we decided that we wanted to try to do this year is recognize people that are giving back, contributing, and attending meetings and going through to make sure that we're making contributions. And so we just want to take a moment and thank Rob for all of his intelligence, what he brings back and his feedback, for making sure that he participates. And he is certainly one that is probably, I think he is on the agenda to be speaking in 2021. So again, we just want to thank Rob for everything that you have done and what you'll continue to do. And whenever you guys have a moment, shoot him an email and let him know. Just say thank you, because certainly he's just done a fantastic job. So again, thanks, Rob. Really appreciate it. So we want to start off a little bit with some poll questions. Lisa, do you want to pull those up real quick? For those who are a CFP in the wealth management world, or if you are a CPA in the CPE world and you would need any continuing education, if you just want to check yes, that's fine. Lisa will then send out a virtual kind of a form for you to complete and send back, and we'll get you your 1 hour of credit for either one of those. So, and then the other one is really a way to participate and network with some of the people here, since we're now on a virtual basis, is to make your contact information available to other people if you would like. So if you would like to be able to share your contact information and maybe reach out to other people that are on this meeting or in other meetings, then you can just say either yes or no. So we'll just kind of leave that up to all of you. So great, fantastic, great results there. 100%, 10 out of 10. So that's good. 11 out of 11. So I think we're in good shape there. Don't feel obligated. It's just your personal preference if that's what you want to do. So let's go ahead and get into our speaker, Randy Rua, certainly the president. Many of you know who he is. He owns Nuvescor Mergers and Acquisitions. He is not only a regular with the EPI West Michigan chapter, he is on the leadership team, and he has been a resident of the greater Grand Rapids area for a very, very long time. I had the pleasure of meeting Randy last year in San Antonio. Actually, no, it was in Nashville. When we met, and we just decided to kick off the chapter and make sure that we could roll it out. So he certainly wanted to be part of that process, and has been, a great individual to input information and just kind of bring back good data for what we need to continue to grow this chapter. So with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it over to Randy. He's going to give us kind of an update on the new M&A world and valuations in the new COVID era. So Randy, again, thanks, and the floor is yours.
All right, well, thank you. Last year in July, I was able to talk about kind of the status of the M&A market. So when we came up, we're talking about doing it this year, I was thinking, oh boy, this is going to be interesting, because we talked about it back when I think it was in March, about doing this again, and knowing that things are in flux, I wasn't sure if I could bring any clarity. I'm not sure if I am bringing clarity still, but I'm bringing data at least. So what I did is since March, I've been collecting surveys, because it seems to be a popular thing that every organization, association out there is trying to survey their members and trying to get a handle on what's happening. And so it was interesting to look at all of that data and kind of gather some key insights from that. So that's what I want to share. But the title of this slide kind of says it all. EBITDA, as you guys know, is used in valuation. So we're looking at the earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation, amortization. That's standard. What everyone's trying to figure out is, what do you do with coronavirus? How is that factored into your cash flow? Is it an add back, and how can you add it back? We don't really understand how the full impact of it yet. So that's kind of the environment that we're in. It reminds me of back. So I've been doing M&A for since 2004, around that time, so over 16 years. And I remember right after 2008, 2009 timeframe, we had the same issue. There were companies that were recovering in 2010, but we didn't have any history because it was wiped out in 2008, 2009. So it was kind of the same thing. Do we add that back? How do we deal with it? So very similar. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is, how the banks handled it at that time, and how a lot of advisors handle it too, is we started just shortening our time frame. So it used to be pre-2008, 2009 timeframe, you looked at 5 years of history when you looked at companies, and that's how you did valuation. That's how you kind of looked at what kind of cash flow can you count on, and we just shortened it to 3 years, and that helped. So by 2012, 13, we were out of the situation where 2009 wasn't an issue anymore, but it would have been if we used the same way to look at companies. So I think it's the same thing. Is what is that add back for coronavirus? How are we going to look at companies going forward? We're going to develop a way to do that. It's just a matter of time. But it'll probably be similar to how we handled the last major downturn. So what I want to cover today is, a couple of main things. So first, the M&A activity in the marketplace, before COVID hit, and then kind of what's happening afterwards. And then these surveys that I collected, they're from different groups. So I had surveys from other advisors. I had surveys from buyers. I had surveys from valuation professionals and associations, and then sellers. So this kind of gives you that cross section of perspectives. And then we'll talk about some industry highlights, look at certain industries and some key takeaways. So next slide, please. So the pre-COVID information. So when I was actually last year, when I was talking about the market, I commented on how back in 2015, I thought we were going to be at a peak, but it didn't stop. I mean, it didn't go up a whole lot from there as far as the market activity. But like it says here, the merger staff did a review, and they said, it basically, we've been at a high volume of transactions and dollar volume of M&A transactions for the last 5 years, consistently higher than right before the crash, which was a peak before. So it's amazing how we just kind of hovered at this very high active level. The M&A market has been a fantastic market for the last 5 years. And so I kept waiting for something to happen. I never would have guessed it was going to be COVID, of course, but I kept waiting for it to change because it was just too good for too long. Another indicator was the buy-side services. You know, the Intralinks has done a survey of, you know, the different strategic buyers out there and private equity groups that are actually engaging advisors of M&A services on the buy side. And they're saying those engagement levels have been at a 10-year high consistently. And even through COVID was interesting. So this is almost like a post-COVID thing. They're still high. So the buy side activity is not diminished. And I think that goes to the next point. You know, PE funds have $2.6 trillion in dry powder. That's a lot of money. So right before, as of May, they've got all this money, 2.6 trillion, they're trying to find a way to put to work. And that's dry powder. That means that's cash they need to invest. So that's what's driving a lot of this buy-side M&A services and a lot of the valuations we've seen. And a lot of the activity of the last 5 years is because these funds have been going crazy, raising capital and trying to deploy them. But what's interesting, and this is more of a, I guess the last point, it kind of goes along with it, but it's a little bit of a post-COVID, is that they noticed that in March, April timeframe, this was done in May, JP Morgan did a study on equity, and they found that PE fundraising, at least on a monthly comparison, has dropped by almost half. So fundraising is definitely slowed right now, as I think they're trying to figure out. They already have enough dry powder as it is, and then they're trying to see, you know, how are they going to be able to deploy that. So, you know, so down the road, if that pause stays for a while, you know, maybe we'll use up some of that dry powder and kind of normalize the market some. Next slide, please. So looking at what's happened since COVID kind of hit, I've been relying on a survey that was done of over 600 advisors as part of the AMAA. That's the Association for Mergers and Acquisition Advisors. And so that's a great group to kind of get a pulse of what's going on in the marketplace. So using their survey information, you know, we found out how many deals that basically were just put on hold. And so they said people reported about 40%. So Nuvascor, we had 6 deals that were in closing at the time when COVID hit. And one of them was just put on hold. That, you know, we're like, we can't really do anything right now until after we get far enough down the road. So we were happy it was only one of them. The rest of them, well, except for another one that terminated, which is the next point, we moved forward. So we had one that was put on hold, one that flat out terminated the agreement and said, I don't know when we'll be able to look at something again. So we're going to have to, you know, not move forward. And that was actually after the deal fell apart because the buyer walked away. So that was an unfortunate loss for us, but you know, it matches where the market is. About 14% of deals in closing have been terminated for advisors. And then we're pretty close to the market in terms of the number of deals that are still progressing. So about 35% of advisors' deals are still progressing towards closing, and we had you know, 2 out of 6 that are still progressing, so that matches 33% as well. We have added 2 new additional transactions under LOI during COVID, so we're happy about that. There's buyers that are still willing to sign letters of intent and still move forward. And then we actually closed 2 deals, so it was a little bit higher than the average of 11% of deals getting closed during COVID. So we feel blessed that the impact wasn't as heavy as it could have been, that we're able to get some more deals under LOI, we're able to close some transactions, and we technically only lost, you know, 1 deal from a long-term perspective. The part I think that was the hardest, and this is something that 40% of advisors reported, was, you know, 0 new engagements. And we had the same thing, you know, February, March, April. The people we were talking to just said, look, right now it's too hard to tell what's going to happen to even think about selling my business. So just the pipeline completely dried up. And, you know, we were kind of worried about that. 20% of the advisors said they got at least 1 new engagement, and we did get, luckily in July, so not during February, March, April, but luckily in July, we're able to all of a sudden bring in 4 new engagements. So it kind of like once it opened up pretty quick. And since I put this together, we got 2 more engagements, so now we're up to 6 new engagements in July, which is just amazing. And they're great companies that are having good, strong financials. They've bounced back all the way from where they were. So, I think you're going to see spatterings of some good companies still out there. But those are the ones that are going to want to move forward, whereas the ones that still haven't got back to their prior volume are going to probably hold off. But the overall transaction volumes definitely dropped. So JP Morgan, back in that report they did, they said that, starting in March, when you compare it to the history, the number of transactions and IPOs both dropped to a 10-year low. So there's definitely a lack of opportunities out there and a lack of M&A transactions happening right now in the marketplace.
Randy, is this kind of a trailing number that usually comes out at the end of every quarter, just past the end of every quarter? So it's
Right.
not really. It'll be a little bit lagging to kind of determine what's happened since, February, March, April. So let's just say May, June, July. We probably won't know till probably sometime in September. Is that fairly accurate?
Some of the surveys were quarterly basis. Some of them were just one time, just to try and get a handle on what's happening. So,
right.
That were pretty recent. I tried to keep all the surveys that I work with, at least by May, June timeframe and July, so that they're as recent as possible. But you're right, it's a changing environment. So the data is definitely going to change as we go through this. So it's kind of meant to be a kind of a current snapshot of what we're seeing.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So, so back to the kind of what's happening right now from the advisor's perspective. Again, some of the comments they made in this report from the Association of Mergers and Acquisition Advisors, a lot of them believe it's going to take a couple of years. So, 55% are saying at least 1 to 2 years, and then an additional 28% saying 2 to 4 years. So if you look at over 80% of the advisors are thinking it's going to take at least a year, if not up to 4 years, to get back to the activity level. Doesn't mean there won't be deals out there to do. There just won't be as many deals out there to do because there's going to be a lot of companies that have enough problems that they're probably not going to be able to transact right now. And so the part of that's advisors are expecting majority of sellers to wait, and so that waiting out is what's going to delay activity from picking up again. But they also expect the buy side activity to increase even more, even though it's been a strong demand for the last several years. They expected buy side activity to get higher because of lack of opportunities. We've seen this. We actually have we had 3 engagements on the buy side that came in. So it's been really busy on both the sell side and buy side for us recently. But these buy side engagements are really good engagements for us that we probably wouldn't have seen before. But they're really looking for companies that can help them find opportunities that are not on the market, just because they're desperate for deals to look at. So from the PE group side, there's a survey that was done, and this is older, so this is back in April. I was trying to get everything in May and June and July, but this is right after. This is in the thick of it, so their answers might be a little bit more pessimistic than they would be now. But at that time, over 80% were saying, "Hey, look, our pipeline is dried up." I've been talking to PE groups regularly. My team has. They're saying that's still a complaint. So it hasn't changed, even though we're a couple months past that. There's just not as many opportunities to look at. 50% of them are putting deals on hold, and that's something that we experienced with the one transaction. We also are experiencing it with a new LOI that we just got, where the buyer said, "Hey, we're going to sign the letter of intent with you, but we're not going to close until 2021, just because we can't see how you can close until you get more clarity." So a lot of things put on hold just to kind of wait until things become clearer. Now, back in April, I don't know if this is different, but the PE groups were complaining, and I talked to a couple that complained that, "Hey, these lenders want more equity now, so we can't get the same ROI that we used to get. So, these sellers are expecting us to pay these high valuations because there's such demand for their business. We have to compete, but we can't get the same return on investment because the lenders are not giving us as much money. So we have to bring more equity to the table." So they said, on top of that, some were asking for higher interest rates. So I'd be interested to see what that's changed since April, but that was kind of the status at that time. A third of them believed it would take 3 to 6 months to even consider what the current, financials will look like in the future, and then 43% said 6 to 12. So again, 76%, the majority of these groups are saying, hey, we can't project anything right now. It's going to take at least 6 months or so to be able to get a handle on what's happening. The valuation reduction side, this has gone down just from my conversations. In April, they were saying, hey, we expect, about 25% reduction in valuations when we're looking at companies, just given the market environment. I think it's down more around 10% now is what I'm hearing. And at that time, a big chunk of the PE groups, about 55%, were saying at least 10%. I have had several PE groups, though, say, hey, if we can just hold out, wait, and let things stabilize, we don't need to do any reduction in valuation. We can use our standard valuation model. We just have to have a little more clarity before we can be comfortable with that. If you want to transact now, you're going to have to take a hit in value. And then part of that is also driven by the lending environment, and this could have changed, but almost 70% said mezzanine lenders were just not funding new deals, and that's going to be a real difficulty for some of these larger transactions where they're relying on that mezz lending to be able to get the deals funded. So hopefully that's getting better. So this Dealmaker Plus survey, I didn't put the date on here, but this was a recent one that was done in July. So that gives a little bit more current perspective from the PE groups. That's why I want to include this survey as well. And you still have the number one concern is lack of attractive businesses to buy. Now, I laugh because that's been the number one concern of PE groups as long as I've known PE groups. So I don't know, it's nothing new. Lack of attractive businesses. It's probably worse, but it's always been a number one concern. But the number two has not always been. The number two, has been something that they've said no problem. I mean, usually when I'm talking to PE groups, say like, oh, funding's the easiest part. Not anymore. They're saying it's more difficult to secure financing for these deals. So that's still, as of July, back in April they were concerned about it. Now in July they're saying it's still an issue. So again, I think that's going to make it difficult for them to pay what they used to pay because they can't get as much leverage. And that's why 95% of the PE groups as of this month are saying it's going to be a low. If you want to get a deal done, over the next 6 months, it's going to have a lower valuation. Otherwise you better just wait. So unless you want to wait for the next year, expect to have some kind of hit because there's too much uncertainty. Now, we've been able to manage some of that through deal structure by shifting some of the risk to the seller. So maybe we don't reduce the valuation, but the seller has some contingency on performance, but it's got to have to be some kind of risk sharing if they don't want a reduction in valuation. But on the other hand, what's interesting is almost 60% expect that the competition for deals is going to increase. So they're saying, hey, I'm going to play less, but I expect more competition. So that's kind of a weird thing, right? Because you think about free markets, normally, if there's more buyer competition, the price goes up. So those two things don't coincide in my mind. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out because the competition is definitely real. We have an automation company we're working on, and they got 9 proposals, and they're all very good, very high valuation proposals. A lot of competition. So I think again, it depends on what kind of company you're looking at, what their performance is. But if it's a good company, an attractive business, I don't see valuation going down. There's just too much competition for those type of companies out there. Yes, for run-of-the-mill companies maybe, but not for high-performing companies. And then the last point goes along with that too. 26% it's prices to be irrational because of competition. So it's funny they say value is going to go down, but it's going to be now they're saying it's going to be irrational. So I think it's just back to no one really knows what's going to happen, but we do know there's more buyers than sellers at this point. So what do the valuation professionals say? So the National Association for Certified Valuation Advisors, they actually did they put out some guidelines, and Joy from my office and I actually attended some of their trainings, and they're trying to train their certified valuation advisors on how to do valuations during this time. So it's interesting to kind of hear what their thinking was. And so they are really saying, hey, you should probably expect to, given the risk in the marketplace, increase your equity risk premium And they gave some guidelines on that, and basically saying that should result in about a 10 to 50% decrease in valuation. So if you're trying to get a valuation done for tax purposes, now's a great time to do it, because they're being taught to automatically devalue your company given the market environment. And to do that, the market comps are passed, right? So the market comps you're going to use in valuation don't have Corona built into it, so you can't really use those. So they're saying use the discounted cash flow method and put more weight on that when you're doing a valuation. And they're also saying look more at current cash flows than doing like a 3-year average. So look at 12 months, look at what's happening right now. And if you could do a projection, do it. But because projections are probably not very plausible, they actually say if it's for a third party sale type of situation, that you should do scenario analysis, where you're basically getting, putting a couple different cases together of what could happen to the company, and then having kind of a valuation range from that. So that way that could be used as a tool in negotiation, where a buyer could say, look, we don't know what's going to happen, but let's come up with a deal structure that allows us to work together. If things go well, you still get good value. If they don't, we'll still have some protection. So that's something they talked about doing, which makes a lot of sense. And then again, the debt, they also brought up the fact that they're seeing a push for more debt in deals. So they're saying that that's going to cause reduction in valuation as well. So the viewpoint of the valuation organizations out there is, if you're doing valuation the same as, I think he actually made a statement, if you're doing the valuation the same as you would have before COVID, then you're not doing a service to your client, because it's not the same. And these are the recommendations they give. But basically, a summary is come up with a lower value. That's what they're pushing for. So on the seller side, it was hard to find actual surveys out there done on business owners who are looking to sell, but I did find the National Center for the Middle Market. They did a survey which was of business owners in the middle market, not necessarily sellers, but I thought it would help. And what was interesting is they were saying, hey, look, it's going to be an average about 6 months before their business kind of recovers, and it's going to recover. And that's something I've heard, quite a bit. So back to that 2021 time frame, to kind of be able to look at companies and look at their performance. So we surveyed our clients and our pipeline clients. So we had 4 current ones that were kind of just getting ready to go into the market that we surveyed, and we had 13 that we've been talking to that we were hoping to bring online here soon to take to market. And so we kind of use this data to say, okay, what's going on with them? And what we found is, 10 of them out of 17, they're really concerned because they expect, like it says, a moderate to large negative impact on financials. Of course, they're factoring in COVID with that. The question is, can we add some of that back? Can we adjust it? And we don't have a clear answer from the buyers in the marketplace on that yet, but there's definitely the financials are not gonna look pretty for 2020. But there's 10 of them that still, even though that's the case, they still would like to sell as soon as possible. And so, they have decreased their valuation expectations. So it looks like there are sellers who are willing to sell, at least in our current portfolio of potential sellers, 10 of them are saying, hey, we'll take a lower value than we would have before COVID. So there is some openness for a decrease in valuation. But there's 7 that said, we're not going to take a decrease in valuation. We're just going to wait, and at least a year to see if things settle out. So there will be those that are waiting. There will be those that are kind of looking to move forward and may take a valuation reduction to do so. So on the industry side, there were some comments from advisors on what they're seeing in different industries. And one of the main ones that I heard over and over again, and I've heard this in the news, and I'm sure you guys have too, is this trend of manufacturing coming back from China. 2 of our buy-side engagements were just that. So one of them is a wire and harness manufacturer that has about $3 million, not a huge amount, but $3 million in sales that they just do not want to have done in China. Like, it's not worth it. We're a $100 million company, and we got this little bit of wire harness manufacturing done over in China. Why do that there? Let's buy something here and have it here. Another one is in the machining side. They do a lot of machining over in China, and they like to bring all that work back. So they're looking to buy some machining centers to be able to do that. So So we've seen that trend ourselves, just in the buy sides that are coming to us, actually wanting to do just that. Some other sectors that information out there is hospitality, as you can imagine, has shown a huge decline. Energy, as you know, is and then retail and consumer. That seems to be hit the biggest. Healthcare, even with the disruption and the shutdown, and they're still expected to do good in 2020. Telecommunications is doing good. Utilities are doing good. So there are some industries that are still doing okay. And then you've got industries like finance and insurance and different professional services that, because we can work virtually, really haven't been that as affected as other industries. I think for us in West Michigan, the thing we have to look at is automotive industry. And, that was already at kind of at a high level, and it was already predicted to slow down before COVID hit. So now the question is, how much will it slow down? I know there's different data out there. I was trying to find some information, but it's still very mixed. But one thing that I found that was common is saying, hey, if we want to bring stuff back from China, which we do, then we have to get our costs down, because we can't right now, we can't compete with China. And the way they're going to do that is through efficiency and automation, which goes back to the point I made about that automation company that had all those offers on it. And we have another one that we're bringing to market now. We're really excited for. We just got that engagement. Those businesses are worth a lot of money right now because everyone needs automation to actually allow this trend to occur on bringing work back from China. So it kind of fits together. So for us, it's been fantastic because manufacturing and automation are kind of our main space that we focus on. So some of the key takeaways, you cannot treat all the industries the same. There's not a broad base across the board saying what's going to happen, because it depends on who's performing and who's not, what the demand is. There's some industries that are doing better, right? So it's not like a normal recession where it's across the board. It's going to be in select places. And as I mentioned, some of our new engagements, they're back to where they were, and they're making up for what they lost in COVID. So not every business is suffering. And there's a lot of bad news out there, but it's not all bad news. Even though there's going to be buyers that are trying to use that excuse to say, well, we should devalue the company. And like I mentioned before, even the valuation professionals are being taught to devalue. But I'm not sure if I agree with that. If it's a strong business that's recovered well and it's an industry that seems to be doing well, why would you devalue it? That doesn't make any sense to me. So, but there will be people out there that will try that just because of the market environment. And I think, again, the high buyer demand, and since the supply is low, because there are a lot of sellers who are just deciding not to go to market right now, there's going to be a really high imbalance between demand and supply. So I think it's going to drive values even higher for good companies. So, and the last point here, sellers that are waiting, they still have to sell at some point. They have to exit at some point. And so there will be a stockpile of supply at some point that's going to be coming to market. Everyone's been waiting for it. The buyers have definitely been waiting for it. That's why all the fundraising has occurred in the PE space, is because there's an expectation that these businesses are going to come to market, and they haven't come to market as strong. And here's another excuse for most owners to say, well, let's just wait another couple of years. And if you give the average owner an excuse to wait, they will. So, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. And I think that goes to what this group is about. How do we help these owners? If they have a good business right now, and they have recovered well, this might be the best time ever for them to sell. They may face the lowest competition as a seller that they'll ever see, in the history of their lifetime, because once these other companies start coming to market, they're going to have more competition. It's going to drive prices back down, and they're going to have to be top of their class then. So depending on their situation, it might sound odd, but now might be the best time to sell. So with that, I guess we'll go into any questions people have.
So if anybody has any questions, you can either, let's just put them in the chat room if you don't want to ask them, or go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can go ahead and ask Randy a question.
Or comments. Anyone has any additional input?
Yeah.
Randy, you didn't mention the construction industry in your list of kind of what's moving up or down or whatever. What are you seeing there?
I'm sorry, I missed, I couldn't quite get that.
Construction related companies, what are you seeing in valuation there as far as demand or moving up or down value? Or?
Oh, you said in construction?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we do have, we actually have a construction project that we're closing this Friday. So we closed, one of the ones we closed during COVID was another construction company. So we were surprised at how well they held up. You know, I think it's part of it is even though COVID put a lot of their work on hold, their work didn't go away. So, you know, they held up fairly well. You know, so were you asking what kind of structure? Is that what you're asking for? Or valuation? I forget what you were asking.
Valuation really is what I wondered about.
Yeah, so, you know, it obviously, you know, valuation depends on, you know, the size and their intangible values and things like, there's a lot of different factors, but to give you an example, one of them is selling for 3.5 times and the other one we sold for almost 6 times. So it depends on a lot of factors. It's a big range. So I can't give you an exact number for construction, but
Specifically, I just wonder what impact COVID had on those things. Valuation or even deal quantities in the market or buyers or sellers in the market.
Yeah, in this case, because these companies' backlog didn't disappear, it didn't have any impact on them. We basically added back the COVID impact. So that first slide with the EBITDA, that was exactly what happened on those situations. Now, having said that, the deal structure changed and that, okay, we're going to evaluate the same, but some of the projects, they didn't know when they would come back. So they were saying, you know, when they come back and when they get done, there'll be some future payouts. So there's some payouts tied to those projects because, you know, the risk of what happens if there's another downturn and somehow those projects do get canceled. And at this point they weren't, they were still in a backlog, but there was some risk sharing on if they get canceled, how do we protect the buyer from that? But the valuation didn't go down. It was just more of that kind of situation.
Randy, this is Rob. I was interested in, I think it was your April survey talking about interest rates and that banks were charging higher interest rates to businesses.
Yeah.
Since then, I don't think I'm up to date on the business rates, but I do observe that mortgage rates came down significantly to levels below anything that I've seen in my lifetime. I wondered, since then, what's happened to business rates?
Yeah, you know, the ones that they're talking about are the business rates for loans that are not personally guaranteed. So you're looking at, you know, the PE groups like to use, you know, non-guaranteed loans, and those are getting a premium right now because they're saying, hey, if you want to have us bet on the business in this uncertain environment, you know, we're just going to charge you a higher rate to make up for that risk. Whereas I think that the business loans that are personally guaranteed are actually coming down in interest rates. So which would match what you're seeing on the consumer side.
Any other questions for Randy? Excuse me. All right, Randy, thanks so much. Really appreciate the input. I think I think this is really good information for us as advisors, certainly for owners to have, because it allows them and allows us to really think through how to make a little bit better decision and how to move. But I think what Randy said in a lot of ways is the good businesses will still have a great opportunity even in today's market because they'll have probably slightly less competition than they might in a robust market. And I think that kind of goes back to, you know, the businesses that really plan and kind of prepare for that transition and keeping that business ready to be sold at any time really puts them in a very good position, even in down markets like what we've seen here today. So I think it's a good thing. So Lisa, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So I wanted to just kind of move on to what's happening through the Exit Planning Institute's 2020 dates over the next couple of months. In August, certainly we're going to be talking about some buy-sell agreements, exit strategies, and more with Jeff Hammond from Miller Johnson. So I think that's going to be just a fantastic meeting that we have there. I think really diving into buy-sell agreements and understanding the impact of those for any type of transition, so to speak, I think is really, really going to be important. And then coming back in September, certainly we have kind of I want to say a panel discussion, but it's, we have Jeff and Kimberly and Bob that are really going to be talking about executive compensation and how has that really been utilized in helping business owners transition to their next piece. And then we have David, who's going to be talking in October from growth to transition. So I think these are just some really good speakers. They got some really good topics. So we want to thank all of them. I think a few or all of them are on the call today. So thanks for being on today. And I think it's going to be some really, really good information. So let's go to the next slide. Do we skip over? Yep. Okay. So the leadership team decided that we were going to hold a separate chapter meeting in September, and that's going to be on September 15th from 7:30 to 9. This meeting is specifically designed for business owners, and we are going to be talking directly about an internal sale to a key person. So we have 3 business owners that are going to participate in the panel discussion, and we're going to have a criteria of questions and open it up to the group for questions to the business owners about what were some of the things that they may have thought about before they sold to a key person, what were some of the challenges that they had really kind of along the way, what were some of the successes, if they could rewind it, what would they do differently that they think might work a little bit better. And I think they're really going to kind of share a lot of information. So we're going to be inviting a lot of business owners to that meeting to help them understand what some of the things that they may want to ask. So if you do have business owners that are considering this or have talked about it, you may want to have them register for this event and then maybe attend it for yourself. So anyway, that's what we have for one of our meetings for September. Lisa, you want to go to the next one? And then, of course, we've got ourselves on Facebook and then also on LinkedIn. So all of our information is going to be posted there. We have also just created a SharePoint page site for the EPI West Michigan chapter. So we will be getting that up and running a little bit more. And the recordings from these meetings will be posted on there, which all of you will have access to, and it will direct you back to our YouTube page, which hosts the links for the webinars so that you can watch them right through YouTube. So anyway, that's what we have right now. What do we got next there, Lisa? Oh, yep. And if you have an article or anything that you think that you would like to post or get out to the group, and you would like to make sure that it gets out there so people would find it educational, certainly send that over to Lisa, and she can get it back over to the leadership team. We can kind of get it through and get that posted for you and get it out for people for reading. All right, so I think right now, Lisa, we're going to break out in some breakout rooms, right?